Hello and welcome. My name is Karen O'Connor and you're listening to Menopause, Marriage and Motherhood. Hello and welcome. I'm here today with somebody that I've really looked forward to talking to, and that is Pamela Anderson from Emily's List Australia. Welcome.
Thanks, Karen. So lovely to be here. I'm very excited to be part of this conversation as well.
So let's just start with a little bit about, well, first of all, what Emily's List is, and then how you came to be involved with it. Let's get the background stuff out of the way, and then we can move on to the deeper, meaningful questions.
All right, let's do that. So Emily List, first of all, Emily is not a person. A lot of people think it's named after a person. It's actually an acronym. It stands for Early Money is Like Yeast because it helps the dough to rise. So our core purpose is to help women once they're pre-selected to then run campaigns and with the view to get elected. So our core purpose is getting more women into government so that we can make sure that good policy for women and families for put into place and remain in place. So that's kind of our core purpose. We're also fight for women's. We've got 6 values that we underpin what we advocate for and what we lobby for and what we will fight for, basically. So we are a pro-choice organisation. We do believe that women should have full autonomy over their bodies and that women should be able to make choices without fear of criminalisation, discrimination or violence. We also believe that gender pay gaps, so equal pay, is another one of our core values. We believe that just because what occupation you choose doesn't mean if you choose to take on a caring role, you should not be disadvantaged by taking on something that's seen as paid less in society. We know that that's kind of undervalued at the moment. Well, not kind of, it is. And also that we also don't think you should be disadvantaged for taking time out of the workforce to care for your family, such as children, parents, cousins and aunties. And that should not impact you in retirement. That's something that we're seeing a lot of women going into retirement almost poverty-stricken. We also believe that access to affordable early childhood education and care is really important. It helps to get women into the workforce so they can go back to careers that they want to go into. They're not just going to go back just to work, just to hold a place, and all their money goes towards childcare. And we also know that it's really good for children from an early age to have that socialisation and those foundations nice and strong. We also believe in gender equity. That's something that we're really, really passionate about. Obviously, we don't believe that anyone should be treated any different because of the gender that they are or identify as. And we believe that everyone should be treated as humans, and it's just basically a human right to be treated with respect. And diversity, we believe that we are better by having more diverse people in governments, in corporates, in courtrooms, in boardrooms, everywhere. We think that we are much better by having diversity, and that diversity includes gender, so women. We've fought for the affirmative action laws, rules that you see within the Australian Labor Party, where we actually have 50% representation of women in most states. There are a few states that are a little bit behind, but also our federal government at the moment is 50% women, and actually, in actual fact, the caucus is 60% women. So we see much better policy coming from that balance, and we're also really excited to see a lot of diversity with culture, religion, and of course ethnicity as well. We want to see big culture around that, and also ability. That's another thing too that's really important to have those. Everyone should be represented at all levels. And a new one that we've introduced in the last 12 months is respect. So we believe that everyone has a right to live without violence and fear of violence, and that's especially and unfortunately still happening to women and children in this country and around the world. And we just think that that's something that needs to be completely stopped as much as we can. So they're our 6 values, and that's really what drives our organisation, and that's how we decide how we will advocate, seek policy around, and also, campaign around. So that's our core values.
I was reading an article, I don't know whether it was from your website, but I think it was in The Age, where they were saying that Emily's List is the reason that the Labor Party has that equal representation, as opposed to the Liberal Party, which, as you know, has a complete dearth of women in it, particularly in cabinet.
Yes.
Julie Bishop's about the only one that I can think of.
Yeah, that's true. Yes, that is. So our founding members, so we were founded by Joan Kirner, Gillard, Carmel Lawrence, some of the big names, and there was a lot of other hardworking women in the background that also helped with the foundations. We've got also legends such as Sharon Jackson, Candy Broad, Claire Moore, and we've got also Cheryl Davenport, all founding members of our organisation. And I know I've missed some, because we've got an amazing core of really awesome women who fought hard 25 years ago, nearly 30 years ago, to get those rules put into place so that today the Labor Party looks the way it does. And they are all Emily's List women. In some states, the rule was put in just before Emily's List was started, but it was our founding members that fought for those rules that then caused, I suppose, birthed Emily's List, so to speak. So, yeah.
So what is it you actually do? If a woman wants to stand for government at any level, you help support her and train her. What do you do?
Yeah, so we don't necessarily get involved in council. Our focus is on state and government, and state and federal governments. And the reason for that is we want to get policy in that helps women and families. And with council, they don't necessarily have policy. So, gender equity policy, pay gap, legislations. You've got, the equal pay laws, those type of laws, pro-choice, so decriminalising abortion laws. They're the big things that we've fought for that make life just simply better for women, and then flows into families. And then just, if you make life better for women, it's going to help everybody. So that's the core purpose of what we do. But yeah, you're 100% right.
Yeah. So I have a friend that went into local government, for example. She's the only one I know that's gone into any kind of government. She left after about 2 years because she found it so toxic.
Yes.
And not just from the men either. The women who've been in there a long time, can be quite vicious.
So, Karen, it's interesting you say that, because I'm probably going to get in trouble for saying this, but I'm going to say it anyway. But local government's not our area, that we don't help get women elected into that area, but we do provide training, as you said earlier. So we provide training, and then we provide mentoring, and we provide campaigning. So we'll actually literally come out in campaigns shoulder to shoulder with our women. We fundraise for them. We really get into the nitty gritty. But local government, I have a few concerns about. I think there is a toxic culture happening in local government, and yes, it is happening to women, and yes, it's happening by women to women, and also by men to women as well. So I think there's a really toxic culture in local government that needs to be addressed. There was actually a report done by the Vic state government just recently addressing some of those issues. So that's something that, even though it's not really what we do, but it is something I believe we have a responsibility to support all women who are elected. And so that is something that we're going to be turning our mind to very shortly, to try and support women in that area, because it's just, people say to me, can you encourage, so I've got First Nations heritage, can you encourage more First Nations women to run for council? It's like, well, I know that there's toxicity in this level. The reason why it doesn't, people say, how come it's more toxic in local government and not so much in state and federal? And the reason for that is, firstly, the media will call it out, and also there's also parties. So you've got, in local government, most people sit as independents, so they're not aligned to a party. So, I'll use the Labor Party as an example. So those state and federal government, you're aligned to the Labor Party. So the Labor Party has a set of values, and then now they've got a code of conduct. And if you start breaching those rules, they're going to kick you out. Do you know what I mean? So, and we see that happening with the Liberal government too, people getting asked to leave the party because they no longer meet their values. And so when you've got a party, I think there's more, you have to behave a bit more, because there's a consequence. Whereas in local government, people can treat each other however they like. There's no consequences. There's no one's going to say, well, you've got to leave. Do you know what I mean? There's none of that consequence. So they can basically do what they like. It becomes incredibly toxic. It's not just toxic for the councillors. It then becomes toxic for the staff as well. And so I think that, that's something that really, really needs to be addressed. If we want to, especially if we want to get more women representing and more good things happening, we need to address those issues, especially when it comes to gender equity as well, because you're just not going to get there if you're going to have that toxicity.
No. Toxic, yeah, no, and I just find it interesting that, yes, it's okay, it's great. Like, don't get me wrong, it is great to have party lines, like this is appropriate behaviour, but hang on, why doesn't everybody see that appropriate behaviour is a basic requirement for being in any kind of representative position?
Well, I 100% agree with you. I think that there should be, there should be codes of conduct around behaviour. I mean, the fact that you even have to have a code of conduct just to say be nice to people shocks me still. But I mean, you see it, but people seem to think that there is some exemption to good behaviour for some reason. You see it all the time on social media, for example. People believe that they're allowed to treat people however they like, and there's sort of like, I suppose, if there's no consequence for bad behaviour, people just think they're allowed to do it. And it astonishes me. I agree with you. It astonishes me, but it's just the fact that we have to even have these conversations and go, well, people, we have to have a code of conduct that tells you how to be nice to people. You know, this is how you don't bully. Like, I mean, it's just, it shocks me still to this day. You'd think that in 2023, for God's sake, we would have worked out how to be kind to each other, especially after what we've all been through in the last couple of years. You would think that there'd be a lot more kindness and a lot more front of mind to say, you know what, I don't agree with that person, or that person's point of view is not what I would agree, but let's have a listen, see if we can meet somewhere in the middle. Like, I mean, that's sort of how I think, adults behave.
I was going to say, having a code of conduct kind of seems a bit kindergartenish.
It really is. Really is. It's just, yeah. It shocks me. It does. It really shocks me. And I know this is really biased, so I shouldn't say it, but it shocks me more when I see that behaviour coming from women to women. I know it shouldn't, but I just go, oh, come on, guys. Like, we've all fought so long to get women into these positions. We've fought so long to, get this balance, and now we're going to rip each other apart. Like, come on, let's push each other up. There's enough room for everybody.
One of the things I was going to ask you about is the different kinds of discrimination. And this kind of feeds into it nicely because I grew up with overt sexism and, what do you call it? The patronising kind of, it'll be all right, dear.
Yeah. Yeah.
Dad still does it, drives me insane. But he's 85, so, forgiven, Dad, you're forgiven. Yes. But there's so many more subtle kinds of sexism now, aren't there? And you talking about the women, the toxicity from other women is kind of one of them. It's almost, what's the word, Stepford Wives, kind of that, women should be this and all you women are doing it wrong because we need to be like this and look up to our man. And
pass. I'll pass on that.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah, I mean, oh gosh, that's a really good point. I'm just trying to think. Yeah, so there are different types. So misogyny, though, is what underpins all of it. And I think, too, something I'm sort of, realise, misogyny doesn't just come from men. It can come from other women as well. And misogyny is basically where it's that internal viewpoint that, because you are a woman, you therefore don't know how to do X, Y. I'll give you, one of the things that's always annoyed me is that women are bad at math, or women can't, manage money as well. Well, hang on a second. That's not true. Do you know what I mean? I've got a 7-year-old, and if you ask her what's your favourite subject, she says maths. Do you know what I mean? And she's damn good at it. And interesting, I was similar when I was younger, I was good at maths. And then when I got to about year 9, everyone starts telling you that, actually girls aren't good at maths. So, so then it's that sort of it's that behaviour that's instilled, and it's that's I think what you see a lot of. And I think there's a lot of good stuff been happening too to try and break those, I suppose, gendered stereotypes. It's just that subtle type of, it is misogynistic, I think. It all comes under misogyny. I mean, we don't have this, well, we do still have people pinching people on the bums and wolf whistling and stuff like that. That doesn't happen as often. You'll see the subtle, which is, exclusion. It's possibly, not sharing of information, which is something that is, quite awful. So you see that sort of stuff happening. But I think, it all comes down to, it's just that tone of misogyny which just needs to be thrown in the bin.
How do we combat that, though? Because if I look at even school kids, certainly when kids hit the high school years, it is ingrained.
Yeah, I don't claim to have all the answers for it, but I think that really it starts with showing, especially young girls, showing them what they can be, and celebrating. I think so. If I'll use an example. I was talking to some women the other day, and one of the women said that she was the first girl in one of her area to do woodwork, and that was in the 1980s, to participate in a woodwork class, and she had to fight to be part of this woodwork class because they were trying to send her off to sewing. Well, that's, do you know what I mean? Like that's crazy. Like, you know, I think having more women and encouraging more women and telling women you can be a plumber, you can be an electrician, you can be all these other things, you can be a CEO, you can be an accountant, you can be, you know, financial advisor, you can be all these roles that you might see mostly men in, but we need to see more women in these positions. We need to celebrate the women in these positions, and we need to show these teenage girls that there are other occupations than, say, hairdresser, teacher, childcare. You know, you can work on a construction site if you want. You can be the dogman whistling for the crane. You can do these roles. There's no reason why you can't do these roles. And if people, I know that historically they'd use, women you have to lift things above a certain weight. Well, it's not good for anyone to be lifting anything above a certain weight. So that's rubbish. Do you know what I mean? So thank goodness for discrimination laws which prevent that sort of rubbish from occurring. But, you know, I think this idea that, you know, women can't do something because they are weaker, women can't do something because they don't have or all women are unintelligent in a particular area is absolutely ludicrous. If you look at our makeup, we're actually no different to men, and we have the same brain structure. We have the same. I mean, where we do differ is obviously through puberty, but I mean, we don't actually have the different in intelligence levels from men or women. You know, so it's just crazy to think that we couldn't do something that a man could do, and I think for me, I've got 2 daughters. I always encourage them to do whatever they want to do. I don't ever say, oh, no, girls don't do that. I know that when I was learning to drive, I wanted a bigger car, and Dad said, no, that's a boy's car. I said, I think I want it now. So I always say to my daughters, they say, oh, no, that's a boy's car. Even though they're little, I said, that's a boy's colour. I said, no, colours don't have a gender. It's just a colour. So I think we can do a lot with our own family, with our own, you know, networks, just by changing language. I think is a really big, important one. Allowing people to explore, and then encouraging more women to go into these spaces where we don't see a lot of women. Encouraging these women and then celebrating them when they're there as well, to try and encourage more women.
Yeah, and it works vice versa too, doesn't it? Because how do we get the men to accept traditional women's roles as being okay for them to go into?
I agree. And look, I remember both my daughters, when they went to childcare, there was a young guy who was working there, and I thought, this is great, awesome, right? But then some parents complained.
Yeah.
And I thought that was absolutely heartbreaking. And I thought, that poor guy, he wants to work with children. People are like, oh, why would he want to work with children? Because he probably enjoys playing with kids, like, not in a creepy way, but, you know, like, he wants to educate early education. They're educators, by the way. They're professionals. They're educators. He probably wants to educate that foundation level. And I thought, how wonderful to have a young guy doing that. But unfortunately, he got pushed out because people made awful assertions that why would a guy want to be in that role? Well, because he probably wants to educate the young minds. He understands the importance of that age group and says, well, let's educate them now. And I thought it was just brilliant. But unfortunately, he did leave because of that. And you're right, it goes both ways. There's not enough male teachers in schools at the moment. We need male teachers in schools because, especially, we young boys, they need to see that men can become teachers. I think teaching is a fantastic profession. And I think it's really sad that a lot of men are actually walking away from it. They're walking away from it because of preconceived ideas that people are applying. And that's something that we also really need to address. I don't have a solution for that, but that's something that we really need to start thinking long and hard and say, well, you don't ever assume some awful allegations against someone because they want to take on a particular role. Yeah,
it's a really difficult one, isn't it? Because, I mean, one of my second son, he's an actor, so totally in touch with his feelings, as you can imagine. But he had a part-time job where he went into daycare centres to do the singing and dancing a few times a week. But then think of the Wiggles. The original Wiggles were all men, you know, and they were all primary school teachers as well.
I know. I think an occupation should have no gender, really. No. Let's be honest. Do you know what I mean? I think it's just ridiculous to, start gendering out. I personally hate the stereotypes that we apply to people, and I think that's the issue. It's funny. I actually saw someone talking about how, this is probably a little too far, but how gender reveals are already stereotyping. I was like, oh, okay, well, technically, yeah, but they're kind of fun. But technically, yeah, you might be right.
I watched. There was a program on a couple of months ago about parents who are choosing not to reveal the gender of their child until the child chooses, when they're like 7, 8, 9, chooses which gender they want to be. And I think of so I had 2 sons, then 2 daughters. So I had, let's call it boy toys, just because my eldest was into trains and Lego. So we had trains and Lego, everything Thomas the Tank Engine and everything Lego. It's fine. So when my eldest daughter was born, having worked in the construction industry myself, I was like, yeah, I'm not buying any girls' toys. I'm just not going to, don't see it. When she was about 2.5, she went to a friend's house who had all girls' toys, dolls, prams, feather boas. Yeah. My daughter thought she died and gone to heaven. She put every feather boa on. She's in the high heels, the sparkly skirts, everything. She'd never seen any of that toys till then. But it's a personality thing, Correct. Because then I think of my second son, who's the actor. He liked to dress up too. She likes to dress up. The eldest one wants to build stuff and make railways, Youngest one was just music and art. It's all different. And
100%.
It's great that I got to see that difference, and that I did wonder at the time, I'm like, oh my gosh, is that just built into her, that she's a girl and she wants all these dolls and wants to push prams? I never wanted to do that, by the way. But the youngest one didn't. So it's interesting.
It is, and like you, I've got 2 girls, and like you, my older one sing and dance and all that, and whereas my younger one, she's obsessed with the Barbie, but she wants the airplane and she wants the cars and she wants that sort of, and Lego, and we sort of having said that, my oldest one was obsessed with Thomas the Tank Engine for a period of time, which I don't really like that show. It's too annoying. It's a bit creepy. So I mean, no, it's fine. But yeah, so it's yeah. But I mean, I think it's just, it's important for kids especially just to let them explore, right? There should be no, oh, you're a boy, so therefore you can't dress up like that. Yeah, I think we put too much pressure on kids, but then you don't, and then there's the opposite way where, it's, no gender at all and all that. And I mean, look, I don't know what the answer is. It really does come down to each individual kid and each individual person as to what's going to work for them and to each family. But the one thing I would say is just don't teach your kid to hate people because they're different. Mm-hmm. I suppose maybe that's where all this toxicity starts. Like don't teach your kid to judge someone because they do like to. If it's a boy and he likes to wear high heels, then great, because I don't know about you, but there've been boys been wearing high heels for a very long time, go all the way back to the French royal families, and in the 16, 17, 1800s, they all wore high heels. Women didn't, men did. So, they all wore pink too. So, it's just, it's been a society change that's actually deemed these things to be a particular gender. So I just think there's an opportunity for us in our generations to start teaching our children just to be nice and just to be, don't just accept people for what they are, and just to embrace liking everything. Why can't you play with dolls today and then play with trains tomorrow?
I struggle with especially younger people when they are afraid of something different, because I think that's where a lot of it comes from. And I struggle with that. Like, oh my goodness, why at such a young age are you so afraid of difference?
I agree with you 100%. And I think that's the concern. Young people should be exploring. Young people should be open to different, like I know, we embrace in our household, great, that's awesome. What's different? Unique, let's be honest, unique is fun. Different is fun, I don't want anyone to be the same. That's going to be boring.
I know.
We're all the same. Boring.
You're boring. I know. So when let's actually go back to the topic here.
Sorry.
No, it's great. This is my usual episode. Let's just go all around the moon. Talking about when, I suppose I'm coming at this with a specific question in mind. Or not question, specific assumption.
Okay, go.
Here's my terrible assumption. If a woman wants to go into politics, it's generally because they see an inequity and they want to change it. If men go into politics, it tends to be because they like the power. Vast generalisation there. Apologise to any man who doesn't fit into that little hole that I've just built. But is there that kind of difference? And no, I suppose that's not where I want you to go. I think what I'm asking is, how do you support the women? Because going into politics to make that kind of difference doesn't seem to be the general reason for entering politics, certainly in the last 10 years. Seems to be getting way more towards, I want to create my own little fiefdom. I want everything to go my way.
Yeah. Look, I know a lot of guys who are in politics for the right reason and who are doing it because they genuinely want to see change. They're there because they've either grown up with adversity or they've been around people who've grown up and they want to actually go and change things. They want to see the world get better. I know a lot of male MPs who do that. But yeah, you are right. I'm not going to say all women, because there are going to be some women that are going to want to go in there for power. Let's not sugarcoat that. But I think a lot of the women we work with, I'm going to say all the women we work with, are there because they genuinely want to see better policy for women. They want to see the world a better place for families. They want to see more inclusion. We've got a lot of women who will come to us and say, I want to run because I represent my community, a multicultural community or a CALD community, and I want to represent because I think that, we don't have enough people who look like me in Parliament. I think we need to be represented in Parliament, and I also want to fight for this particular a change in legislation and law. And so we're like, awesome, that's great. And we'll support them. We support them by training them firstly. So we do these training courses that really gives the nuts and bolts, and then also the nitty gritty stuff of what you need to know. And sadly, we also have to teach our women that women get more attacked when they're campaigning. So women will get more vile social media. Women will get more verbal attacks. They're at higher risk of being stalked, all these other things. But we also teach them how to work through that and try and encourage them for that not to be a deterrent. My concern is that sort of stuff is a deterrent, to some really good quality potential candidates. The media, we know, will also attack more progressive women as well, which is something that is awful. They'll always have a negative. There's more, not always. There's more negative spin against a progressive woman than there are of a conservative woman, which is really disappointing. And we do these training programs that tries to help them work through that. We give them mentors. Mentors are really important because mentor's that person that will help you navigate through these things when it gets difficult. Campaigning's not an easy thing to do. So it can be you're giving a lot of yourself to the public, and people, for whatever reason, think when you give a lot of yourself, they're allowed to say what they like about you, which can be quite confronting and difficult. But having said that, there's a great group of network women, especially in our organisation, that will come and support the candidates during that time. And then we physically will go out and letterbox. We train people how to phone bank. We train people how to door knock. And we stand there on election day and hand out to people and say, hey, vote for a great woman. And so we do all those sort of things. We support in that way. But it's as for, wanting to go in with the right, I think if you're not going in it for the right reason, those type of things that you're going to face. So if you're going to get attacked by media or you're going to get attacked on socials, it's going to be harder to do it because you don't have that end goal. If you're just striving for power and then people are coming at you for all directions, that's sort of not going to drive you, I don't think, to the next level, because it's being a candidate's not easy. It is hard. It can be quite exhausting. And so you need to have that real true belief that you're going to do something great, that you really want to do that the change you want to make is so important to you that you're going to keep pushing through. And that's what I think keeps a lot of the people going.
That's a really good point. How did you get started with this in Emily's List?
So I got started in Emily's List because just after the 2018 election, when the Morrison government was voted back in, and I was just angry with the way women were completely and utterly ignored. And I've also been always been a massive Julia fan, always been a massive Joan fan. So, always sort of heard what Emily's List was a member for a while, but didn't really sort of, get involved, but got really active in Emily's List after that, because I was like, no, we need to get good governments in. We need to get good women. And so I started to get involved by just going to the local meetings. So I live in Victoria. So going to the local meeting in Victoria, we have one in each state. And so going to the local meeting with some awesome, fierce feminists. So it was really cool. We would have these amazing conversations. We would talk about, great stuff that had been done or things that should be done. It just became like you walked into the room and went, I think I found my people. So it was just amazing. And then after a while, after a few years, working with and getting active and helping and with events, organising events and getting involved in fundraising, I then became the state co-convener. And then I have a financial planning background. So I got, I like to say tricked, but that's not very nice. I then became the treasurer because it's fantastic and an honour to hold that role. And then our previous CEO was decided that it was time to move forward. She'd done what she felt she could do with the organisation, and decided that she wanted to move on. And so I sort of put my hand up and said, "Oh, okay, I'll give that a go." And here I am, the CEO. So it's been an amazing journey as the CEO. We've worked on 5 campaigns, I think, and very excited that each of them have gone our way. So not that but we like to think we have an influence on it.
I was going to say, how do you train a political candidate? What is involved in that?
Yeah, so there's like basics to, there's a few other programs around the traps too that are training women on the basics of campaigning or becoming a candidate. So, you've got your pathways, you've got your politics and colour, you've got a few other groups that are coming together and doing that training. But our training is more specific for the party. So we train our women on how to fundraise. We train them on what you need to do in order to be successful with phone banking, how do you pull together your campaign team, because you can't do it on your own. And we sort of really give them that checklist of what they need to do to pull together a really strong team to then have that support behind them to then go forward. And then we also help them, if they are successfully elected, we then also help them with some documents that we put together that helps them put their office together as well. So it's mostly training about how to fundraise, training about what the rules are around campaigning, what you can and can't do. And then there's obviously the more party specific stuff, which we can do because we are associated to the Labor Party. So we do more Labor Party dedicated training for our candidates. So, yeah.
And what does that involve?
So it's more about, how to navigate through the party, how to, get yourself seen, how to, demonstrate to, the particular party that, you're someone that they should definitely have as a candidate. And so it's those type of little things that, we sort of teach them what they need to do to get to that level where they can be successful for pre-selection. We don't get involved in the pre-selection side of things, but we do definitely, get them enough knowledge that they know how to navigate their way through that system, which can be quite, unique.
As you're saying it, I'm like, I kind of know all this, but I was completely not present to it at the same time. It's interesting, isn't it? Because I know, we all know how the political process works, but I don't think I've ever thought of it from, if you wanted to stand as a representative, exactly what it takes. And yeah, it's interesting how intricate it is. Like, I know there are a few other, because the Liberal Party doesn't have anything similar. Does it have anything similar for the men? Is there something similar for men, or is this just like specifically created to support the women in the Labor Party? Is that the only one that is available?
So we are only here to support women in the Labor Party, but I have been told that the Liberal Party has just recently started something similar to us to try and support women through their party, which we think is absolutely fantastic. And I really hope that they have a lot of success with it, because even though we only support, and the only reason we only support Labor women is because of we want them to be progressive. We want them to be looking at the policies that we believe are important. And whereas, and the Liberal Party, we want to see more women in that party. We want to see more diversity. We want to see better representation, because it's important to have all sides of government well represented and robust enough to really drive the country forward.
Yeah, and even throughout Parliament, like, it shouldn't just be, the party of men, which is kind of the way it's going, is the Liberal Party, and then you got the diverse party over here.
Yeah, absolutely. And look, I don't know. To be honest, I don't know if the Greens have done anything, but it would be good if they did. But for those that want to run as independents, there's things like Pathways to Politics and Politics in Colour and a few other organisations that are coming to the front that are able to do those type of things as well. So the government's actually invested quite a bit of money in trying to get women to get interested in getting elected. It's something that they've actually done. They've had been quite a few grants that they've actually given to organisations to try and help them to encourage more women to get elected. And so that's something that's really front of mind, which I think is really great. And there's also been a really strong program for local government as well. So there's a big program on at the moment. So I can actually get the details to you later if you like, and if you want to share it. But there's some programs too to help local women local government, women to get into local government, which is also local government's a good place to start if you kind of want to dip your toe in the water. It is political though. A lot of people think, it's not political, but it is very political. You are entering into politics. And so I think that's something too that surprises a lot of people when they get to local government.
Yeah, it surprised my friend. And that's like a country town as well, which is far more conservative, far more set in the ways, but also in a way completely removed from either state or federal politics, because it's a little country town,
Yeah, and look, councils actually play a big role in those country towns. They're actually very important in those country towns because often they are the main sort of point of contact for any discrepancies or any of the, and often you're talking about a lot of the issues in country towns may be more around council-based issues. So you're talking roads, you're talking accessibility of properties, you're talking development, or licensing, permits. For farming, etc. So that's more of a local government level, and so they play a bigger role, I think, in regional.
So what happens when you actually get elected? Do you support people then? Because, like, for anybody that's not listening in Australia, who's not in Australia, we've had a lot of bad press just recently about the misogyny and the sexism and the sexual assaults and all sorts of predatory behaviour, particularly in federal. We hear about it in federal government. I have no doubt that it kind of filters its way down through state government and everything. Do you support women through that process once they've got elected?
So traditionally, we haven't given a lot of support. So our model is, there's an Emily's List USA, and our model was a little bit based on that, where you got them elected and you went, see you later, but keep the door open for the next woman to come through. But we're actually finding that when women, especially new women, when they're elected, so we do assist them to find buddies in Parliament, so other women who can help support them. We also do check in quite a bit with them and make sure that they're okay and provide any support that they might need. But it's something, and we also will help them campaign to get re-elected as well, but not to the same depth that will help new candidates. So we do support them, but we also keep a relationship with them because that's how we want to put forward policies or talk to them about policies that are important. So, for example, we're working with some of the women's health ministers in different states at the moment to try and improve some of the abortion laws through, I'll use Victoria as an example. Even though it's decriminalised, accessibility and affordability is still an issue. And so we want to make sure that that's addressed and that, any women who need some healthcare can access it, not regardless of whether they're regional or what's in their bank account. We don't want people to be disadvantaged for that. And so we're really wanting to address affordability and accessibility because that's something that we know is still causing a problem, especially in regional parts of states. And so we're working with the health ministers to get those type of policies addressed, to try and get better conditions for women, and to make sure that, healthcare is healthcare and it's treated as healthcare. So
let's just move briefly, because I'm looking at the time. We're going to have to finish up in a few minutes, which is a shame. So I have so many questions I want to ask. let's move briefly on to Indigenous women as well, because you've recently created in Emily's List an Indigenous program as well, haven't you?
Yes, we have. So I've got ancestors who are Aboriginal, so I'm very proud to be associated to the Yorta Yorta and Gunai mobs, and that's from my father's side of the family, so I'm very, very proud of that ancestry. And as that, I'm a big believer in leaving the door wide open and putting a hand out and helping them step up. So we've embedded First Nations Emily's List Australia, which is called Fenella at the moment. We may change that name. And that's designed to help get more women, First Nations women, elected, but not just elected too, getting them, encouraging them to work in policy, encouraging them to work in ministers' office, encouraging them to work in MPs' offices. So there's a lot of careers that can come out of politics as well. If you don't want to be an MP, you don't have to be a member of parliament. You could also potentially work for someone and have just as much influence if you wanted to. So we're really working hard on that place, and that's a continuation of a project that was started many years ago by Joan Kirner, which was called PEN, and there's some amazing founding members of that as well. And that PEN project was designed to get more multicultural, more First Nations women into wanting to run and get elected. And so Fenella is like the next stage where we're actually, and we've got on Emily's List National Committee, I think we've got 4 First Nations women now, which is the largest number we've ever had in history. So we're very proud of that.
Isn't that terrible? Like in this day and age, it's like, I've got 4 women, we're so proud, like 4 Indigenous women. This far out. That is, and particularly, like, even if you take it at a local level, there are very few Indigenous councillors locally, and then that feeds through too.
Yeah, so there's only one in Victoria. There's only one First Nations councillor in Victoria. I think there's quite a few up in Northern Territory. There's quite a few First Nations people up there. So I think there's a total of something. Someone said to me like 200 First Nations councillors in total around the country, and majority of those, like 100 or 160, are from Northern Territory and Queensland. So, so the bulk of them are from there. Majority. So yeah, we should be having more, considering that, First Nations people have been here for so long, but but they haven't always obviously been given the opportunity or the rights. So that's something that we really need to be aware of as well.
Because that adds a completely, and apologies for saying Indigenous, should have been First Nations.
No, that's fine. That's fine.
It should, that's like the double whammy, isn't it? Being Indigenous or being First Nations and a woman is... That's great, basically.
And that's something that in the first wave of feminism, a lot of First Nations women did say that, for white women fighting for feminism, that's great, but we're just fighting for a lot of First Nations women at that point in time were just fighting to have the right to vote, just to be considered as a citizen in this country. So that is something that we really are aware of, and that's why we have such a big focus, and we are so keen to get more First Nations women involved in local government's fantastic. Getting involved in working for MPs, getting involved in policy and working in these systems where you can actually make this change. That's where it's really important to do that.
So just before we wrap up, I'll put all the links to your websites and everything
fantastic
on the page that goes with the episode. But thank you so much. It's been so much fun talking to you.
Thank you. I really enjoyed it too, Karen. So much fun. Thank you.
If you enjoyed this episode, be sure to subscribe and don't forget to rate and review this podcast and share it with your friends. Thanks so much for listening, and I hope you're leaving with some thought-provoking information that can make a difference in your life. See you next time.